Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Cricket Podcast, where we are talking about Decision Day. I don't know what it's called. The most important day in Group 1, as England took on South Africa in a thriller, one of the best games of the tournament so far, and Australia took on a team of old age pensioners in the morning in a benefit contest. That's what we're going to be doing. I'm Jack Hope. I'm joined by Dan Weston. How are you doing, Dan?
I am good, Jack. Yeah, I'm good. Yeah, I was just woken up after that first game. I'm gonna write a letter to the Associate of cricket statisticians or whatever they are to ask them if they can remove the T20I status from that first game, because it was like a testimonial.
Yeah. It was a really weird day of cricket. Because the afternoon match was actually pretty
Amazing,
high
wasn't it?
quality. Yeah, it was a really good game. But the morning one, it hurt my eyes to look at it.
Oh, it was so bad.
Anyway, before we get on with the show, if you're watching on YouTube, hit like, hit subscribe, get involved. The road to 10k. We were on a steep incline up towards 10k, and now we've flattened out a bit. We've plateaued. So let's get that incline going again. And the only way to do that is you hitting subscribe and like and leaving us comments and all of that stuff. If you are listening on an audio platform, leave us a review or whatever. Hit subscribe. That's the key thing. And we're on Twitter and Instagram at the Cricket Pod. Ross does the Instagram and he's very lazy, so there's not a lot of content there. I tend to do the Twitter, and I'm not lazy like Ross. So we do actually tweet. Dan, I've just realised that I am in charge of summarising those cricket matches. It makes sense, doesn't it, to start with the game that we actually enjoyed watching, the
I think so. Yeah,
the evening
let's
one.
do that. Yeah, let's do that.
So this afternoon, South Africa took on England in a game. So because of what happened in the morning, there are a bunch of permutations. In a game where South Africa, they had to win by about 60 runs for net run rate to come back enough into their favour for them to go through. England went through if they won the match or if they didn't get completely dicked. And the match was in Sharjah, where they appear to have put a real pitch in, which is nice.
No.
It's a good, I think a good step by whoever's in charge at Sharjah to put a cricket pitch in for the T20 World Cup. Then in the game, England started, as they have quite regularly in this tournament, with a lot of spin up front. I think targeting the weakness that South Africa had. But South Africa, they played quite cleverly, I thought, and they negotiated the spinners. They weren't scoring too quickly, but they were scoring quick enough that they weren't out of the game. And it got to about halfway through the innings, and England were in a situation where they were going to have to bowl, I think, 8 overs of right arm seam to South Africa, who had 8 wickets in hand, which was basically the perfect situation for South Africa to be in. They took advantage of that. Rassie van der Dussen, 94 of 60 balls, probably his best innings for South Africa. Aiden Markram, just as good at the other end, 52 off 25. And they finished up on 189, which looked like a pretty good score, and there was some great hitting in the last 12 overs. When de Kock fell, they were 86 for 2, and they off 11.2, so they had 100 runs off the last 50 or 55-ish balls of that innings, which is good hitting. Everyone for England took punishment, apart from Adil Rashid, who picked up figures of 4 overs 32 4-1. Well, actually, and Moeen Ali, but he was at the top when I was reading down, so I just skipped his name. 4 overs 27 4-1. All the seamers getting battered by Rassie and Aiden Markram. In response, England set off pretty well, but suffered a potentially devastating hit for this match and for the tournament, as Jason Roy limped off with a suspected torn hamstring. I would be very surprised if we see him in the semi-finals or final. In later overs, England sort of potted along. They were doing okay. They were never out of the game, but they were never romping either. And eventually they sort of just ran out of batters. There was one great over where Livingston hit Rabada for 3 sixes, including a 112-metre beast. But they ran out of steam. They fell 10 runs short of the South African total. I think probably on the day the best team won. Dan, what are your initial thoughts if we just focus on the key trends from this match?
Yeah. Okay. So first of all, think South Africa needed England to get 1-3-1 or less. Was that right?
Yeah, 1-3-1 was qualification point for South Africa.
Yeah. So that's the key figure. So I think there's a few things worth discussing here. When you need to win by 60-odd runs, which it was, unless you get an absolute tons, I think they needed to win by, 58 in the end? 58? Yeah, 58. You don't need your opener playing 2 off 8 balls to start with, and that was just like I don't really understand what Reza Hendricks adds to an international T20 team, and he showed it again here. Another thing is that you talked already about them adding just over 100 in, a bit under 9 overs after de Kock was out. Yeah. But at that point, Van der Dussen was only not much more than a runner ball. So he kind of accelerated. And actually, he didn't really kick on massively to death. I think if it wasn't for Markram, they wouldn't have got anywhere near 189, to be honest with you. I think this is kind of like the Van der Dussen's kind of ceiling in terms of strike rate, if that makes sense. In his innings.
He's a similar-ish player probably to David Milan, isn't he?
Yeah.
I'd give him more credit though. I think I'd give South Africa in general more credit. I think they game planned this pretty well. I think they knew that England were going to hit them with spin up front, and I think they played that spin in a way that meant they weren't in an uncompetitive they didn't have an uncompetitive score on the board. When England started to run out of spinners, and they knew as well that Chris Jordan was going to have to bowl 3 overs at the death. They knew there was going to be a lot of Mark Wood coming up at the death. Neither of them, they're fine bowlers. Jordan actually, last 4 deliveries aside, bowled pretty well today. But he always has those 4 deliveries. Do you know what I mean? He'll bowl 20. So he might be able to hear fireworks going on outside my house. It's fireworks night here in the UK, which is like the day a Catholic tried to blow up the House of Parliament 400 years ago, and so we set off fireworks.
Technically, it was yesterday.
Well, whatever, yeah. So we set off gunpowder to celebrate the fact that we caught him and killed him, tortured him to death. It's a lovely festival. Jordan, he's got these weaknesses. Mark Wood similar, I think. Unless you use Mark Wood in a very specific way, he's going to be feeding hit-me balls to batters, and I don't think that specific way is bringing him into the game in the 10th or the 11th over. Mm-hmm. And I think South Africa gave themselves that chance. They're not the greatest T20 side. They're not the greatest set of T20 hitters. But if there's one thing or one type of bowler they might be able to take down, it's going to be your quick bowlers. And they negotiated themselves into a situation where they were going to have a little bit of a buffet. And I thought they feasted. I thought they were decent. And he's not Dre Russ, is he? But who is?
I think that it's important also to make a broader point here as well. Is that with this England seam bowling attack, with Wokes, Jordan and Wood, I actually think Wood, you should use him as a power play and middle overs bowler rather than a death bowler. But those 3 bowlers, you're probably assuring yourself of maybe 1.5 death overs. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And that's a big problem now. They've lost Mills. And I think the Mills loss is more significant than a lot of people have thought. They can't bring in David Willig for that. Well, they can, but he's not a death bowler either. So it leaves one man to come in who can solve this. Tom
the Power Curran. Doesn't make any sense, does it? But,
No. and this is a problem for England because they couldn't quite chase a big total today, and with that bowling attack, they could be prone to conceding a big total.
I think it will happen. I think there's a good chance it could happen again. Their most likely next round of opposition is India. It's not India. It's New Zealand. Their second most likely is India. I think both of those teams are pretty smart. They'll know that if you have to bat first, if you can put 170, or you'll have a chance to put 180 on the board. And similarly, when you're bowling, if you can just stop England getting to 200, both of those teams could probably chase 200 against England. I'd have thought.
Well, New Zealand have shown next to nothing intent in the whole tournament so far, so I wouldn't say that.
Well, I don't know. I think I think they've been pretty clinical. I don't think they've had to.
They've done what they've needed to do.
Yeah,
but they haven't provided any evidence that they'd be able to chase 200 even against the England team with a lack of death bowlers. That's
Yeah,
how
I think in the event that they do play, and you see this all the time, and we talked sort of about this idea that there's an England tax. If you're a bowler for England, you'll get hit more than if you were bowling for South Africa or Bangladesh, because other teams, they go into the game knowing that they need 15 more runs.
Yeah.
And so I think that if anything's going to wake up New Zealand, that will. And I think they have got the lineup of players who, in other T20 competitions and in New Zealand, have shown that they are capable of scoring at 10 and over. So I'd be wary from an England point of view, bearing in mind the limitations of the attack with Mills out and whoever in, that they haven't really got a safe score anymore. And their death bowling, I mean, today was shambolic. It was it was clueless. It was they were so outmatched. Morgan was throwing the balls to these guys, and it was clear they didn't have a plan or really the skills to be bowling at that point in the game. Mark was trying to bowl as fast as he could, and people were lapping him over the keeper's head. But because he doesn't have a slower ball, there's no risk to that. It's just just go for the lap every ball, and you miss it a couple of times. Oh, there's your six.
I don't know if you saw the comparison of his speeds on Sky today, but every single ball, I think it was at the time they showed it, was after about 20 balls of gold, was over 142.
Well, that's really impressive if you're playing a test match.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's very one-dimensional if you're not, and it's a very easy game plan to counter it. And I think we saw Rassie van der Dussen do that a couple of times, didn't we? Like, lap him over the keeper's head, one for a big six and one for a four, maybe three times actually. Wokes doesn't really have a Yorker and doesn't really bowl quick enough to do the back of the length thing, and that makes him quite vulnerable bowling at the death. And Jordan, we've discussed Jordan a lot on this show. He actually, I thought was impressive for his first 3.3 overs, and then bowled three slot balls or four slot balls to finish it off, and propel South Africa up to the score that they ended with. So I think we saw some weaknesses from we saw England's big weakness, and it's been covered up a little bit in this tournament, I reckon, Dan, because they've taken power play wickets and they haven't been put in that situation.
Yeah, and they hadn't done that historically over the last couple of years. That power play, they were weak in the power play until recently. I think it's also important to make the point that, to some extent, I think at least, if not a major extent, they lucked into this Tymal Mills solution. Because 6 months ago, before the 100, I mean, I've been talking about Tymal Mills should be playing for England for a couple of years. So, if he's a fully fit Tymal Mills, is an asset to any T20 team, I think. But the problem is that there's not really that much of a guarantee that he's going to be fully fit. But let's not forget that 6 months ago, Tom Curran was their go-to death bowler. Let's not forget that. Curran and Jordan were going to be their death bowlers. Yeah. And they've lucked into this with Tymal Mills. And now Mills is gone, which is a real shame because I think he's excellent. They're in big trouble again.
Yeah.
And this is where it could all fall apart.
Yeah, well, I agree. We can talk about some of the other implications for the rest of the tournament, but let's run through what England did with the bat, because as expected, they played to win from ball one. They obviously they knew they only needed 100. No, it was 87 to qualify, wasn't it? And 106 to top the group. So what they actually would have done if they were Australia is get 106 runs and then check out. But they played they played to chase 190. The big news, and we can talk about some of the individual performances in a minute, but on the theme that we're sort of talking about here, England's prospects for the rest of the tournament, the big news is that Jason Roy goes off with what looks like a tournament ender, to be honest, doesn't it?
Mm. Yeah, and this is where England are now in a bit more trouble. Not that I particularly rate Jason Roy as a world-class player. He's a good player. I don't see him as a world-class player. Now, what the problem is now is that they've got to bring James Vince into the squad because James Vince was in the reserves. Am I right? I think I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, they can't go for Hales, which is the actual solution.
I mean, this is where no one was really made a big deal out of this. But I think I might have said it in one of the pods pre-tournament. I was inspired by the reserve players. I think Liam Dawson was. I don't really understand that either. And Vince, and he's a good player again, but I don't fear him. He's not an intent merchant. He's not really a player with a high 6 percentage. And they're going to have to rejig this team around. Now, I think a lot of people are kind of suggesting that Liam Livingstone might well open, and then Sam Billings comes in some way, shape, or form. Other people are suggesting that Bairstow opens, which I think would be a huge mistake, because I think he's such a good player of spin. Although obviously he got out to spin today, but generally speaking, he's such a good player of spin. I think that where he's batting at the moment is kind of pre-optimal for him in this England team. So yeah, it's an interesting one. Certainly a lot to think about for Morgan and the management over the next few days.
Yeah, I think what's for sure is that England are quite a lot weaker than they were at the beginning of the tournament with Roy and Mills out. The England team that started this tournament was the best team in the tournament. Now I think it's questionable whether that is for sure. There's also, England have been a little bit unlucky, I think, in general with injuries in the build-up. So let's say the 6 months before this tournament. Obviously, they lost Jason Roy today, and they lost Mills in the last match. But there's also no Ben Stokes, no Archer, no Sam Curran, who'd all be in or around the squad you'd think.
Sam Curran doesn't make this team, though.
I'd probably agree with that. But it might be a slightly marginal call between him and Wokes, and Curran might be a better batter if you decided you wanted that. For example,
far better bowler though.
Okay. Well, yeah. No, you're that's probably fair enough. But it is an option that isn't on the table because of an injury.
No.
At least four of those players will play. Archer gets in the team. Stokes probably gets in the team. Roy gets in the team, and Mills would get in the team.
And people will be surprised at maybe what I say is, but do you know how I pick over Sam Curran all day long? Guy's never played international cricket his whole life. I'll pick Benny Howe all day long over Sam Curran.
That's not a very England move, that though, is it, Dan?
No, it's not, but it's the right move.
No, it might be, but they would never do that. It's just not fashionable enough for what they want.
Which is I'm quite glad about that because we got him in the T10 instead. So maybe he wouldn't have been available for the T10 if he was playing for England. So yeah, their loss is my gain. So I'm good with that.
But yeah, it's I think there are definite questions now. I think England can definitely be beaten by whoever finishes second in Group 2. If it's India, I think I'd make India favourites to beat England in a semi-final. It'd be close. It'd be a 55-45. If it's New Zealand, I think it'd be 55-45 to England. But the team England's...
Yeah, it's the 10th they've got in the last two games. Yeah. If they show the 120 ball-eating talents from the first two matches, they've got no chance.
The other big thing that all of this means is that South Africa go out of the tournament despite having played and beaten the best team in the group, which is unfortunate for them, and they've won 4 matches. Now, I think there's a problem with this. I think net run rate is just obviously not fit for purpose, because basically what we've got now is a situation where beating Bangladesh the hardest is what determines whether you go through, and that isn't a barometer of what a good cricket team is. I'm sorry, but that's a ludicrous thing to decide who makes a semi-final. It's a shame, I think, because I think South Africa have shown today that they're a better T20 cricket team than Australia. I know they actually lost in the match that they played against the Aussies, and I am cognizant of that. But if you look at the top of this group, all 3 teams have got 4 wins and 1 loss. They've beaten each other. Australia, if you in a 3-team tournament, there got beaten the hardest by the other 2 teams on 4 wins, and they're in the semi-finals. That's ridiculous. The reason they're through is because they played Bangladesh when Bangladesh were on the fucking plane home. One of the worst T20 teams I think we've ever seen. And they got to play West Indies when West Indies were literally having a party to see off the old boys. It wasn't. We'll talk about this match in a minute, but it wasn't a proper cricket match this morning. There's a problem with net run rate. They need to look at something else as a differentiator, because it doesn't do what it's supposed to do. It's a really gameable system, and it produces some pretty average results.
I take the point. And I know that this is a massive bugbear of yours, isn't it? This net run rate thing. It's something.
It's not as clever as people think it is. It's a fucking stupid. It's a stupid rule.
I like net boundary percentage as a dividing metric, and I'll tell you the reason why. It's because it's such a good predictor of success in the tournament. So, for example, the 7 teams with the best net boundary percentage in the Blast this year all qualified. Now, that's fair. You can't game that system. You cannot game that system, okay, compared to net run rate, okay? Now, also, but then the counterpoint is that you say that South Africa have gone out because they didn't beat Bangladesh by as much as other teams. They haven't whipped Bangladesh by.
Yeah, that's it. That's the reason.
That's their own fault. That's their own fault. Because they had a total 85 to chase, and they did it.
Isn't. We're taking agency away from Bangladesh here. Bangladesh tried a bit in that South Africa match. Bangladesh against Australia, mate. There are club teams. There are second teams in the UK that would have beaten them. Like it was so bad. And the West Indies today, similar. Like they weren't an international strength team. They were awful.
Yeah, no, but don't forget that South Africa went at a run a ball chasing 84 against Bangladesh. We can't forget that. Rassie van der Dussen was got out for 22 of 27.
But I don't see.
A lot of people gave him praise for this innings, I remember at the time. 31 not out of 28. Now, if England would never have done that. England would have got that done in about 9, 10 overs, no problem.
Yeah, sure. But England, look, I understand this, but again, the determining factor here in who is going to play in a World Cup semi-final is who chased 80 against Bangladesh.
Yeah, that's no different to like
that's not an indicator of a good team.
In a World Cup qualifying, it would come down to who's beaten by San Marino by the most for goal difference. Like
goal difference is not completely opaque. Like you don't need a spreadsheet, and it's
that's a fair point.
Not the most bollocks system of all time. Like it's really clear. Oh, we need to beat San Marino by X number of goals. It's very very user friendly from that point of view.
Yeah.
Two, I don't think you get as many situations like that in football because the margins are slightly bigger between some of the teams. I mean, I don't know. I just can't see a logical reason why anyone doing anything against Bangladesh should have any fucking impact on what happens if you go to the semi-finals, unless you lose.
Yeah, it's like not perfect. It's not.
No, it's really far from it. I mean, like I understand it's the rules, and obviously South Africa they should have been more aggressive. That's absolutely what they should have done.
When they chased
it wasn't a secret.
Bangladesh, they knew that net run rate was a deciding factor at some point in the tournament, and in a sort of what effectively was a 3-team group, there was a pretty decent chance that 2 teams were going to come on the same amount of points.
Yeah, look, I get that, and South Africa they should be blaming themselves here. It's not one of the legendary South African chokes. This exit from the World Cup.
No, not at all.
They did play a role in their own demise. I just don't think the rules are fit for purpose as a differentiator. It should be head to head. If teams are tied on head to head, then some differentiator between the teams that are tied on head to head. It should be who played best cricket. Who played the best cricket out of Australia, South Africa, and England when they played each other?
The IPL Fair Play Award comes in, and whoever's got the highest fair play goes through.
Because what we're seeing
for this in the IPL, actually, they show it in every game, don't they? This like fair play table.
I have no idea how it works. Somebody probably does. If anyone in the chat wants to say how that works,
what do you get if you win it?
I don't know. Probably a safari.
Gold star.
Safari.
Safari.
Yeah.
I'd have the fairest team if we got a safari as a prize. I'd love a safari.
There's a few people in the chat who have got opinions on this. Rakayu is on your side, Dan. He says, or she says, that net run rate makes games like India v Scotland actually fun to watch. That was not fun to watch. unless you're the world's biggest KL Rahul stan. That was an awful cricket match.
We do get a lot of KL Rahul stands in the chat, though.
So I disagree on that. Dishank Agarwal makes another good point, I think, here. Is that the venue and the pitches affect scoring rates. So if South Africa played at trickier venues, they might have only been able to score slower. I think
Don't even get me started.
Well, yeah, but it is true. Conditions and so on do affect what an attainable net run rate.
So does intent, though, because
actually could.
On that broader point, I said this to you before this show, didn't I? Isn't it amazing that as soon as these teams need to score runs quickly, these disaster pitches somehow have miraculously improved? And it's what I always say. If you score like a 190 or whatever, it's like, oh, amazing batting. You nurgle your way to 120 for 7 because you show no intent. Oh, pitches are terrible. It's never the batsman's fault. Never the batsman's fault. And now, amazing, all these teams need to score runs really fast. Oh, look, the boundary percentage has increased. What a surprise. And fun enough, so has the win percentage for the teams batting first. Who knew? Honestly,
Well, yeah, that is true, isn't it? I mean,
just show intent. Just show intent,
some,
please.
there's some pretty bad cricket played in the first
Although
half.
we got absolutely slaughtered by that guy on Twitter yesterday.
Oh, don't feed the troll, Dan. Ross has already done. Ross has already done this. You just leave.
No. Well, he's obviously listening today because I'm guessing we will live rent free in his head, and someone's forcing him to listen to our podcast. So yeah, whatever.
Right, let's move on from this game, and we'll do it unless you've got any last thoughts. We've got one super chat actually here from Sunil, who says, "Do you think it was an upset today, South Africa beating England, or do you think Afghanistan has a better chance of beating New Zealand if they bat first?" We're going to talk about Afghanistan v New Zealand a bit later, I think. But the first point there, was it an upset, South Africa beating England? Yeah, it was probably a bit of an upset, wasn't it? It was like something that happens 1 in 4 times, something like that.
Yeah. Well, yeah, 37 I said, yeah, so very similar, yeah, 1 in 4 times, yeah, I'll go with that.
But it's something that could happen. It didn't feel today. It felt today like we were watching a top of the table team in football play a bottom of the table team in football, but they were in the right division. They were similarly skilled. It wasn't a complete farce. Some of the matches in this tournament have been like watching teams 3 divisions apart.
I reckon South Africa beating England was like Everton beating Man City.
Yeah,
like it wasn't like Sunderland beating Man City, which would have been the case if, like, I don't know, Bangladesh are beating England or something like that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Maybe that's doing Sunderland a disservice. I don't know.
Anything else from this match that you want to?
No. I mean, what do you think about the England sort of discussion on the team moving forward without Roy in the team?
Oh, that's a good question. I haven't really thought about this. I think possibly moving Milan up to open gets him out of the way. I don't see another option though. I mean, I don't think Billings is quite as good as people think. He's just not played enough for people to come to that conclusion yet. I don't love Milan in the middle order, and it solves that problem. And I don't really see. I mean, Bairstow's the other one, isn't it? You could just stick Bairstow up there, and they should probably do that. Just get Bairstow to open.
Well, Livy.
I like Livingston in the middle order.
They wasted at 6, though, didn't they?
Well, he might not be batting 6 now. They can all just move up one.
I just think Milan.
Well, that's what will happen. They'll all move up one, and Billings will come in at 6. It's like a seniority thing. If you're newest into the team, you start at the bottom and you get promoted up the order.
So apart from Morgan, who just drops down and down, he'll be like a non-bowling number 11 in the tournament.
And Sunil says, are England, this is another super chat, are England a better team chasing? I think they probably are better chasing. I think they'd have won today without the Roy injury. I think it's a free wicket of a set batter. And that makes quite a big impact on the outcome of the game. It also obviously moves everyone up, and so it's Chris Wokes instead of, I don't know, someone that isn't Chris Wokes who has to hit 2 sixes off the last over. Which makes a difference. Anyway, let's move on to this morning's game. I don't really think I want to talk about this too much because it was utter pants. West Indies batted first. They scored 157 for 7. Chris Gale, in probably his final innings ever, was bowled a little bit unfortunately by Pat Cummins for 15 off 9 balls. Hit 2 sixes. Then we had.
Have I got a question to ask you here straight away?
Yeah, go for it.
You play for Ida at like cricket club, right?
Yeah. Have
you ever batted in sunglasses?
No, I haven't ever seen anyone bat in sunglasses, but it's a thing that a few West Indian players have done. Who's their Test captain? Brathwaite. Is it Brathwaite?
Okay, yeah. Craig Brathwaite, yeah.
Yeah, bats in sunglasses in the West Indies because he gets glare off the pitch.
Interesting.
So there you go. Then he gets out and he gives his kit to everyone in the crowd, doesn't he? I thought at one point he was going to give his jockstrap away. It got a bit, much. Nicholas Pooran continues to be a little bit unconvincing in whatever role he's being asked to do for the West Indies. Roston Chase, why is he there? Shimron Hetmeyer wasn't very good. And Kyron Pollard and Andre Russell sort of dug him out a hole a little bit and scored reasonably quickly at the end. For some reason, Dwayne Bravo came in ahead of Andre Russell. I genuinely think this was because it was his final game and they were like, do a lap of honour. And this again has a hugely positive impact for Australia's net run rate and shows why it's a fucking bollocks system. Because Dwayne Bravo coming in at 7 instead of Andre Russell, the best hitter in the world, is a huge divergence in expected outcomes and benefits one team massively, and another team that's got nothing to do with those decisions gets fucking kicked in the balls. They get 157.
You look at it like that. It's like a football team who like the two teams going into like a promotion match on like the last game of the season. One team decides to sub off their keeper after 60 minutes and put a striker in goal. It is pretty much like that, isn't it? Actually, when you put it like that, I've got a bit more sympathy for that point of view. It's like that, isn't it? Right?
Yeah. Sano again in the super chat said Australia suddenly looking a different team in the world T20 after their bad trail with Bangladesh and India. They look like a different team because they're playing some fucking different teams. Some like really, it's not a surprise that it was quite close when they played South Africa, who were like coherent and aren't 3 tins short of a 6-pack, and then they get belted by England, who are a quality outfit. Then it's that they aren't a good cricket team. They're just a bit better and have a little bit more of a clue. And I guess the players want to be there a bit more than the Bangladesh players. Or West Indies, they weren't a cricket team today. They were a retirement community on a day out. It was farcical. Batting, Warner gets 89 or 56. That'll get him back into the IPL. Can't wait to see him fucking dicking around at Sunrisers next year. Aaron Finch, 9 off 11. Mitch Marsh. Some people were tweeting about how well Mitch Marsh played. I mean, it's when Mitch Marsh is destroying a team, that team is bad. That's the first massive sign that there's a problem. When Mitch Marsh gets 53 off 32 balls. No, I haven't got a vendetta against Mitch Marsh. I don't care. I've never met him. I couldn't pick Mitch Marsh out of a lineup. He's an irrelevance to my life. But I know he isn't good at cricket, and I know anybody who can roll their fingers down the side of the ball can get him out for nothing. Anybody can do that. And fucking Chris Gale did. I mean, this is the depths we failed to. We had Chris Gale cam on the TV. Basically the second innings was just Chris Gale on TV, interrupted occasionally by some very annoying cricket that was being played in the background. I bring him on to bowl. He takes a wicket. Yeah, I've got nothing constructive to say about this match. I hated it. It made a mockery of the whole tournament being a contest. I don't know. Maybe they need to have a look at the format because West Indies, maybe a fifth game is just one too many. I mean, it's should teams be playing 2 more matches after they've been eliminated? Maybe not. Wasn't very fun, was it? Any thoughts, Dan?
Yeah, it was terrible. Look, I think I've said before, I'll say it again. I can't get my head around why cricket like fawns over these old players who are like patently nowhere near as good as what they used to be. Like I said, if it was like cricket, England would still have Wayne Rooney and Michael Owen up front, and it would be down to them to decide when they get dropped. Honestly, like it's so annoying. Like it's not a meritocracy at all. Like these guys, it was so obvious that that they were pretty much done. Because anyone who's like watched IPL and CPL and has an understanding of data and sort of age-related trends and age-related decline, know that these guys are pretty much done before the tournament. But I don't know. Let's give them another 5 games.
Mate, anyone who's ever seen an old person try and cross the road should have been able to figure this out. You get worse at stuff when you get old. And
there's no shame in that. There's absolutely no shame in that. It happens. But it's like in cricket, it's allowed to happen. Do you know what I mean? Oh, well, he's played like all these games and he's leading run scorer and he's leading wicket taker. So we've got to play him, even though we know he's crap. We're going to still play him until he decides he wants to stop. Why? Teams have got to be better and more ruthless at picking out these declining players and saying, right, thanks for a lot of your service, all the best.
Yeah. Yeah, well, they've been a bit slow doing that, I think.
Oh.
They West Indies should have been competitive in this tournament. They have got the players. Not picking Sunil Narayan for a tournament at venues where he would be bossing it in the IPL. Bizarre. Bizarre. Because he's unfit. I mean, look at some of the players in this team.
Couldn't they have given him Chris Gale's fitness test as well?
No, I don't know. Picking Gale, that's fundamentally weird. It's a weird thing to do.
Rampal was weird as well, right?
Yeah, that was a super odd call. They've got two geriatrics in their starting 11. One of them opening the bowling, one of them opening the batting. Have you got a clue?
No.
What's your process? Who's making these shot calls?
But this is the whole point, and I think in cricket a lot of the time, the players do have a lot more power. It's far too much power. Like, and this is why when captains get to pick teams and stuff like that, I'm very strong on this actually, and a lot of people disagree with me, but I'm so strong on this is that captains shouldn't pick teams. Captains have got no understanding of what drives success a lot of the time in teams. There's great captains. MS Dhoni is one, obviously, but like I said so many times, 90% of captains are just in the mid range. They're not going to know what drives a winning team in T20 cricket. Every time I tell someone in cricket about this boundary percentage metric, it blows their mind. They haven't got a clue, honestly.
Yeah.
So captains shouldn't pick teams. The captain should have a say. The coach should pick the team.
Yeah. On a positive note, just for the West Indies, there's not really anything you can take from this game. I mean, it's fair play. Warner and Marsh did what they needed to do. Boosted the run rate. Had a laugh while doing it. Hit some sixes. Hit some fours. In the circumstances, they played perfect innings.
Mitchell Marsh is getting an IPL contract now.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. So yeah, so fair enough. From West Indies though, it is the end of an era. For them, and we should, it's one bridge too far. It's a bridge too far. But they have been a great team over the last decade. And we shouldn't completely forget that. Is it they've been in the knockouts for the last 5? I want to say 5 T20 World Cups, which is pretty good going.
I'm not much of a historian, to be fair.
They've won a couple, and it's a lot of these players. It's players like DJ Bravo and Gale. I think Pollard was injured for the last one, wasn't he? But Dre Russ. So it's a shame to say goodbye to some pretty big characters and some well-known players, and hopefully West Indies rebound. They've got some players I think might be decent in the future.
I wouldn't say that you'll be saying goodbye to them anyway. They'll be topping up their retirement fund in franchise leagues for the next 5 years. So
that's possibly true. I think Bravo is officially retired, isn't he? He's actually calling.
I don't think so.
I think he's completely hanging up his boots.
Well, I've been told he's playing T10 in about a week's time. So
okay, so maybe not. Sunil saying that Ambrose criticised Gale's selection in the team. It was a risk West Indies took. It didn't pay off. Maybe he was picked for a send off. Well, it looked a bit like that, didn't it? And on the topic of T10 as well, he asks, are we going to see some T10 concepts come into T20 cricket? Are there any concepts in T10 cricket that should be in T20 cricket?
Absolutely.
Go on, let's hear a couple of these then.
There's only one. Intent.
We're playing right into the hands of this David Donovan guy or whatever his name is.
No. Yeah. He's going to be loving this so much.
Great. Well, that's that. Should we have a quick look ahead towards tomorrow?
Yeah, let's do it.
The work, because this is New Zealand are playing Afghanistan in a game of cricket that will be watched by millions and millions of people. More people than probably have ever watched New Zealand play anyone other than India will be tuning in to watch Afghanistan. I reckon this might be the actual most watched game of cricket Afghanistan have ever played in. It's the big one. Starts at 10 o'clock in 10 o'clock in the morning if you're in the UK. It feels to me that this is a bit of a banker for New Zealand. Is there anything that Indian fans should be clinging on to? Yeah,
there is plenty. I don't see that there's that much between the two teams, actually, to be honest with you. Now, there shouldn't be any due, so Afghanistan spinners should be able to be pretty effective. I've seen an Instagram video of Mujib in the gym today, and I've heard that he's fit. So that's another boost for Afghanistan. And what you have to remember as well with Afghanistan, they've got 3 or 4 batters who, on their day, if they come off, they can win the match single-handedly. And I'm not sure that New Zealand, like I said this earlier, I'm not sure New Zealand have got a big innings in their locker. I'm not sure how many of their batters have got a massive strike rate innings in their locker right now. They made a massive mistake not picking Finn Allen. Said that at the time. And I genuinely think if Afghanistan play well, they could win. Now, it's probably 40-60 maybe, something like that.
I think it's way less likely, I'm afraid.
Do you? Okay,
yeah.
so
I just don't... One, I think Afghanistan haven't got that much to play for, so I think they'll be a little bit demotivated on that front. I think
they will.
Um,
Don't forget as well, like there's a lot of stuff going on in the country as well. They're going to want to play as well as they possibly can. I think the motivation is going to be pretty high.
I don't think it will be as high as it would have been if they hadn't been pounded by India in the last match and had the net run rate obliterated. Because
I've got a headache thinking about these net run rate calculations tomorrow, which is another reason why we shouldn't have it. But
Afghanistan, they need to win pretty convincingly against New Zealand. Otherwise India will go through, even if they win, because India are playing Scotland in the last match, which is convenient.
Namibia.
Namibia, Scotland, whoever it is. It's one of them, isn't it?
Basically,
one. It is Namibia, you're right. So India, they've already got a better net run rate than Afghanistan. So if Afghanistan win, they need to win and improve their net run rate by 0.5 probably to give themselves any kind of a cushion to realistically stay ahead of India. They might even need to win and somehow manage to add a whole extra run to their net run rate to stay ahead of India.
Your bar's 100 off 30 incoming tomorrow.
So it's not their hopes of qualification are probably 2%. So I don't think there's a huge amount motivating them to play. The second thing is I just don't think their batting's going to be up to it, and I think they've got 12 overs of shit bowling. And I don't want to be too harsh on Afghanistan. They're the perfect example of one of these teams that have got 4 pieces, and those pieces are amazing, and they could pull it off. Rashid Khan could have a spell, Mujib could have a spell, but New Zealand aren't mugs. All they know is if we lose combined 2 wickets or 3 wickets in these 8 overs, we'll park. What's the name of the bloke with the long hair? Javant.
Karim Janat.
Janat, yeah, he's going in the Persian Gulf.
You know what? He's a good bowler, but he's not a death bowler. He's not a death bowler. He's been used in completely the wrong role by Afghanistan.
Because they haven't got anyone else. The other guy they've got is the pound shot Bumrah, who's
not pound shot. No, Naveen's bloody good.
He's good. He's
my boy.
I'm
Naveen,
sorry, I just don't
call him the pound shot Bumrah. Do not call him the pound shot Bumrah.
He is the pound shot Bumrah.
Call him that. He took 26 wickets for me in the Blast this summer. He's quality.
I'm not. I'm sorry, Dan, but we're going to have to disagree on this one. Respectfully, he is not going to be a problem for New Zealand to score 10 and over off if they need to.
Oh no, I disagree. He's very, very good.
And God knows who they'll use. I mean, Naby's okay, isn't he?
This is where I do differ. I think he's very overrated at this point of his career.
They've got 12. In my mind, the seamers no chance. And then if you're telling me that my view of Naby's also overinflated, then that's another big problem. I just there's a few big problems. I'm not sure these two. I was looking at past history between them. I'm not sure they have played each other before in T20 cricket. That must be wrong. I tried to get. So there's not. We might not have much to go on there. I can see routes to victory. Yeah, for Afghanistan, but I think pound for pound, New Zealand are a far, far better cricket team.
I'm not a massive buyer
And
into New.
I don't. I look. I'm not saying that they're an elite level team. I don't think they're in the best. They might not be in the best four teams in this tournament, to be honest. But given the circumstances they're in, I mean, in fact, I don't think they are in the best four teams in this tournament. But because India blew up against them, they should make the semi-finals, and I think they are quite a lot better than Afghanistan. I don't know. Sell me Afghanistan, Dan. Sell me Afghanistan because
So, okay, so they have played twice before in World Cups, but both in 50 over tournaments.
Yeah.
And Russia Khan didn't play in any of them, so that's one thing to as a point of notice straight away. Now, I like Afghanistan because one, they've got 3-10 merchants at the top of the order. Now they might not come on, but there's a pretty decent chance that one of them is going to come off at least. Okay, and Zazai and Gabars in particular are two players who've got massive potential. Nabi is okay. I'm not a massive fan of bowling these days, and an off spinner just doesn't really generally fill me with a lot of excitement unless they're playing against a team of left-handers. Karim Janak can play. He hit 42 off 22 the other day. You've got to use him in the right role. It's that simple. He's a very effective player in the right role. Rashid Khan, we know he's world class. But Majib has missed the last couple of games that they've lost, and now he's going to be back, I think, tomorrow. Nav's quality, no matter what you say. And they've got a few players who are kind of those. You said 4. I'm going to go about 6, 6.5, 7 in terms of players who are very decent. Now they're carrying a couple. If they picked Qais Ahmed in this squad and they picked Darwish Rasuli in this squad, then actually I'd think that they're probably going to be up there. The fact that Qais Ahmed isn't in this squad isn't like beyond a travesty.
Yeah, well, but he isn't, and this is the problem. And they've got players. I'm going to get his name wrong again. Karim
Janat.
Janat, yeah. They've got players like him who may be good if you could put them in their ideal role, but because they don't have a full squad and they don't have the option to do that, he has to do things like bowl at the death. And that's been ruthlessly exposed. It was ruthlessly exposed by India, and it was ruthlessly exposed by Pakistan as well. And I know that game was close and it was a great match, but it came down to a situation where Afghanistan, despite all the good cricket they played to get to that point in the game, couldn't hold on because a better player took them down.
Yeah.
And I think the same will happen against New Zealand. I think, Afghanistan, they can win. They could bowl themselves to victory here. I don't think their batting's up to it. I think the whole batting unit is quite significantly worse than people think it is, and I think they kind of get away with it because they mainly play bad teams, and they get to do things like pile on 190 against Scotland. Now,
I don't know.
Basically, every team apart from Namibia have piled on against Scotland.
Zazai and Gabars have done very well in franchise cricket before, so
how good's very well here? Because
as in like two of the best players in subcontinent franchise comps over in the last year or two. Like these guys are very good. Zazai won 3 or 4 man of match awards in the 5 PSL matches when the tournament went back to UAE. Gabars was one of the highest boundary percentage hitters in T10 last year, over 35%. So these guys are good. I'm telling you now, I wouldn't have signed Gabars for Leicester if I hadn't done my due diligence. And these guys are very good. We've got Zazai at T10 as well. These guys are very good. Okay, now and they're young as well. I think it's important to remember that they're young. And these competitions where there's like 5 matches, you can go, if you're aggressive, you can go like, we've seen this with all the criticism around Glenn Maxwell for year after year after year after year in the IPL. When you're aggressive and you play a high volatility role, it happens. You can have a few failures in a row. Don't judge a player over a few games. Honestly, these guys are good. Where I think that their strategy is a little tricky to justify is the fact that they've sort of shoehorned Mohammad Shahzad into the top of the order. Now, Shahzad was a very, very good player. He's still okay. But because they've done that, they've pushed Gabars down to 3. Whereas I think Gabars is he's wasted at 3 because he's so good in the power play.
So my central argument here would be that New Zealand actually do have a pretty good bowling attack through the whole set of bowlers that they will use. And I think that we talked about this before. Players, when they step up a level, often maintain the same strike rate but get out more. And I think that will be the problem for Afghanistan. It's been the problem for them in the whole tournament so far. I think it will be the problem for them again tomorrow. I think these players, they might hit a few sixes, but because the quality of bowling is going to be a bit higher than they might otherwise play, and it might not relate to all of them. Maybe Gabaz is a step above. Maybe Zaza is a step above. But they're only two players, and as you say, they play high volatility roles. What are the chances of both of them firing? 5%?
No, I think it's higher than that, but I take your point. Yeah, it's not. Yeah. It's not. The chance of them both firing at the same time is pretty low.
And you might need that. You might need that because you're bowling shit.
Yeah.
Not shit. It's not shit, is it? Because they've got Rashid Khan, but it's not. I don't think they're a banker to. I don't think the supporting cast is.
Okay, if we're going to critique Afghanistan, which is fair enough, yeah. Well, I think we should go and do the same thing with New Zealand.
Okay, yeah, let's.
Martin Guptill. Look at his record in the subcontinent. It's not pretty. Any pitch that isn't fast pace friendly pitch is not good. Daryl Mitchell, I wouldn't sign him with a blast. Kane Williamson is good, but he's not an explosive hitter and he's got a bad elbow. Devon Conway, anchor, batting at 4 when he should be opening. Glenn Phillips is good, but he's still hit and miss. Neesham, wouldn't sign him for my teams. Especially when you've got to look at his bowling output as well. That is not a good 5th or 6th bowler. Santner, solid, but I can tell you 10 county left arm spinners who aren't that much worse than him, if not better. Ish Sodhi, not in the top 10 world leg spinners in the world. I've done maths with this before because I do stuff with recruitment. Adam Milne, absolute quality. Hasn't necessarily shown it here, but he's so good. Southey, wouldn't sign him. Trent Bolt, good power play bowler, liability to death. That's my assessment of New Zealand.
But I think that assessment is based on whether they'd be good in a franchise competition. And I think that's fair enough. Fair enough. But if you looked at Afghanistan, you're taking Rashid Khan, maybe Gurbaz and Zazai if they're cheap, and Majib probably again if he's reasonably cheap. You'd pay money for some of the New Zealand players. Who
would you pay big money for at that New Zealand team?
Hold on.
If you're running an IPL franchise, who would you pay more than 5 crore for?
Who would I pay more than 5 crore for? I think that's a fair argument. I think I'd pay 3-4 for players like Bolt. I think you'd probably do the same for Williamson. I think that Phillips and Conway could perform a role in.
You don't need an anchor batter as an overseas in the IPL, though.
No, you don't. But I think these players could get into the IPL and would be starters and would be decent. Now, whether that's because the IPL they make some poor decisions, Milne would be in, wouldn't he?
Milne. Milne, I've got no argument with.
Yeah. I think if you look at Afghanistan, there are some edge cases, and then there's Rashid Khan. And Rashid Khan obviously should be. On these two teams, Rashid Khan is obviously the best player. He's the X Factor player on the pitch. But he can only bowl 4 overs, and New Zealand are very cognizant of the fact that the way they lose this match is blowing up against Rashid Khan. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if Rashid Khan gets 1 for 16 tomorrow, and they completely block him out. I mean, even like Santner, I don't think Santner's an awful option. If you were in the IPL, I think he was a little bit unlucky that he was at CSK last year behind players like Moeen Ali. And I think he can hit okay and he can deliver 4 okay overs. Like they're not waste of space. Yeah, but that's New Zealand through the order though. They're solid but unspectacular. That's the team.
Yeah.
But almost all of them are warrant a place in the team, or you can see why New Zealand have picked them, or they fulfil a very obvious role. With Afghanistan, there are players doing things they shouldn't be doing, and quite a lot of them. And
there's players in that team who shouldn't be in international cricket. I'm not debating it, but I also think they've got what I call higher upside players than New Zealand.
Sunil says you guys are awesome. Love from India. Sunil says you guys are awesome. Love from India. So we love you too. Sunil. Right. We should probably we're talking ourselves in circles a little bit. I think there's there's definitely a cause to watch the game. Yeah, it's not. It's not. It's not.
We've been doing half an hour on this game, didn't we?
It's not Scotland v India or something like that. It's Afghanistan can in theory win. It could be close. I think there's a good chance it'll be close because I'm not sure. And I think you are right. I don't think New Zealand are like a super high scoring side. I don't think they're going to bat Afghanistan out of the game. And I think their bowling attack, while functional, is unlikely to blow Afghanistan away either. I think Afghanistan should put 120 plus up on the board. Even if it goes quite badly wrong for them. So I think it could be competitive, but I just think New Zealand will have the edge because they've got better players 1 to 11. If you line those lineups up side by side, you take Rashid Khan and you take Mujeeb from Afghanistan, you might take Gurbaz and Sazai, and then the rest of the team's Kiwis. Is what I would say anyway. Anyway,
I think that's probably quite fair, but I also think that, like I say, that the guys in Afghanistan have got a higher upside. When you're underdog, you want to have a higher upside.
Yeah, but this is why the game will be good to watch. But I am expecting New Zealand. I would have this as 80-20 New Zealand.
Okay.
I think there is an element of New Zealand being cleverer and more canny and street smart, than Afghanistan as well. And I don't always buy into this. Sometimes people are like, "Oh, it's a mental game. It's a mental game." And it's sort of, it sort of is. But I think it will be very obvious tomorrow that New Zealand will make, if there are 10 big decisions to be made in the match by each team, New Zealand will make 8 of the right ones and 2 bad ones. I think Afghanistan could be 50-50. I mean, Afghanistan could bat first. Now, I know that's sort of worked for them in a couple of games, but I don't think that's the way for them to win this match.
That's a fair point about the strategy side of things. That is a fair point. Yeah.
Right,
if Afghanistan have got... They make weird decisions like batting Gulbuddin Naib at 4 and leaving Rashid Khan down in the order at number 9 or something like that, which is just weird. Yeah.
Well, we are gonna wrap up now. That was an unexpectedly long detour into Afghanistan.
We did half an hour on Pakistan v Scotland.
Maybe Scotland are going to smash Pakistan and New Zealand will win the group. Could happen.
Stranger things have happened.
Yeah. If you are watching on YouTube, hit like and hit subscribe. Do it now. There's 200 people watching. Do it and make us happy. We will be back probably tomorrow with a conversation. Well, we'll be back tomorrow with a conversation about this game. It should be a fun one to watch, I think. And that is everything, I think.
Another thing. How unfair is it that India know what they need to do against Namibia?
It's quite unfair. It's quite unfair. It does undermine things in terms of fairness or whatever.
I agree.
But it's somebody has to go last. There are some other problems. We've talked a lot about where this tournament might be fair and might not be in this pod. So anyway, at the Cricket Pod on Twitter and Instagram. We're sponsored by Woodstock. Patreon.com/TheCricketPod. Go into the show notes now and support the podcast. See you tomorrow. See you later, Dan.
Cheers, guys.